Rebuilds can go horribly wrong. History proves it. Teams like the Charlotte Bobcats and Sacramento Kings have endured some of the worst rebuilds ever, often due to poor drafting, injuries, or just plain bad luck. These struggles can drag on for years, testing the patience of fans. However, one rebuild that has been executed flawlessly is that of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like many successful rebuilds, it was set in motion by a trade that initially flew under the radar, but with the benefit of hindsight, it's clear that this trade ranks among the most, if not the most, lopsided deals in NBA history. And you know what deal I'm talking about, the deal that sent Paul George from OKC to the Clippers. But to begin the story, we have to start with where the rebuild began. You see, the Thunder's path to a rebuild truly began in the summer of 2016 when Kevin Durant, the franchise's cornerstone, left for the Golden State Warriors in free agency. This was a devastating blow for a small market team that had built itself into a perennial contender. However, instead of completely bottoming out, Oklahoma City pivoted quickly. They doubled down on their remaining star Russell Westbrook, signing him to a massive extension. But from an outside perspective, most people knew it wouldn't be enough. The Thunder had just blown a 3-1 lead to the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals with KD. Now if they wanted to make it out of the West, they wouldn't just have to do it without him, they'd likely have to go through him, as the Warriors were now even more dominant. It was a perfect setup for Durant, but a nightmare scenario for Westbrook. He was left leading a team that was now a shadow of its former self. On the bright side, OKC wasn't done making moves. During the 2016 NBA draft, they traded Serge Ibaka to the Magic, knowing he was entering the final year of his contract and unsure if he'd re-sign. In return, they received a young shooting guard Victor Oladipo, and the 11th overall pick was turned into Domantas Sabonis. At the time, this trade might not have seemed groundbreaking, but it laid the foundation for what was to come. It ultimately set them up to trade for Paul George and later trade George to the Clippers in exchange for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a treasure trove of future assets. This is a prime example of how rebuilds don't hinge on a single blockbuster move. GMs have to pull the trigger on multiple smaller deals, getting the pieces necessary to make franchise-altering trades. Now let's focus back on the Thunder's 2017 season. If I had to give this year a title, it would be the Revenge Tour of Russell Westbrook. That's exactly what it was. With KD gone, there was no doubt who the face of the franchise was. Westbrook played with a massive chip on his shoulder, putting up an MVP-worthy season where he averaged 32 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists, leading OKC to 47 wins and the 6th seed in the West. The big question was, we know Westbrook can carry the Thunder in the regular season, but could he do it in the playoffs? The answer was yes, but not really. He did everything in his power to drag them forward, but the results didn't follow. The Thunder faced the third-seeded Houston Rockets, led by fellow MVP candidate James Harden. Westbrook put up a staggering 37-point triple-double throughout the series, but his efficiency was abysmal, shooting just 38.8% from the field and 26.5% from 3. Game 2 illustrates his struggles perfectly. He took 43 shots, making only 17. It became clear that Westbrook needed help. One of the biggest differences in the series was bench production. The Rockets' second unit, featuring Lou Williams, Eric Gordon, Patrick Beverley, and Yin Ye, consistently outperformed OKC's role players, giving Houston a decisive edge. While Westbrook was putting up Herculean efforts, the supporting cast just wasn't good enough to keep up. Like any small organization, the Thunder ensured help was on the way. They pursued Paul George, who was a star in Indy at the time, giving up Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis to acquire him. A few months later, they formed a big three by adding Carmelo Anthony, trading Enes Kanter, Doug McDermott, and a 2018 second-round pick that eventually became Mitchell Robinson to the Knicks. With this trio, Carmelo provided a scoring punch, Paul George as a two-way star, and Russell Westbrook as a triple-double machine. Sam Presti believed this team was built to compete. Unfortunately, Carmelo Anthony became a problem as he scoffed at the idea of having to come off of the bench. Despite the turmoil, the Thunder still had a top 10 offense and defense in the league. However, disaster struck when Andre Roberson suffered a season-ending knee injury in January of 2018. Before the injury, OKC had a top 5 defense, but they struggled significantly afterward. Despite the setback, they pressed on and finished the season as the 4th seed. Unfortunately, Paul George and Russell Westbrook were outplayed by a rookie Donovan Mitchell, resulting in a first-round exit. In the offseason, despite rumors that Paul George would leave for the Lakers, he signed a 4-year, $137 million extension with OKC, allowing them to run it back. They traded Melo and brought in Dennis Schroeder, and Sam Presti was optimistic that this would be their year. However, in the 2019 playoffs, they were sent home in the first round by the Trailblazers, and it was a memorable exit as Damian Lillard hit a dagger over Paul George. That game winner created one of the most sour reactions I've ever seen in a press conference from PG.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bad shot. I don't care what anybody says, that's a bad shot.
While Paul George believed that was a bad shot, the Thunder had an even worse shot at expecting improved results, sticking with the same core. Meanwhile, the LA Clippers were determined to shake up their core and make some significant moves. They were in talks with Kawhi Leonard about joining their team, but Kawhi made it clear he wouldn't sign unless they acquired another star to pair with him. This was a crucial moment, especially after many considered Kawhi the best player in the world following his championship run with the Raptors in 2019. He also wanted to be in Los Angeles to be closer to his family, putting the Clippers in direct competition with the Lakers for his services. In a bid not to be outdone, the Clippers agreed to Kawhi's demand and traded for Paul George. They understood that the only way Sam Presti would entertain a deal was if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was included. Doc Rivers, the coach at the time, publicly expressed his concerns about trading SGA, believing he would develop into a superstar. However, Kawhi was fixated on pairing up with Paul George, and the Clippers knew that failing to acquire George meant losing out on Kawhi. This situation allowed the Thunder to take full advantage, resulting in a massive haul for them. The trade details revealed that the Thunder received SGA, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps in exchange for Paul George. Kawhi, essentially, he set the Thunder on the path to becoming a potential dynasty. This serves as a reminder that sometimes NBA franchises need to resist the demands of their players. Thunder fans can certainly thank Kawhi for the role he played in facilitating their successful rebuild. Just 6 days later, the hometown hero Russell Westbrook was traded to the Rockets for Chris Paul, along with 2 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. With that, the Thunder's rebuilding era officially began, or so we thought. The Thunder began the season poorly with just 5 wins and 7 losses, but they quickly found their rhythm, finishing as the 5th seed. Chris Paul proved he wasn't washed up and even earned an All-Star nod. Unfortunately, their postseason hype was short-lived as they fell to Russell Westbrook and the Rockets in the first round. They pushed the series to 7 games with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander shining brightly. He left fans in Oklahoma City excited for the future. However, none of this could be possible without committing to the rebuild. They traded Chris Paul to the Suns, and Danilo Gallinari was involved in a sign-and-trade to the Hawks. Steven Adams was sent to the Pelicans in exchange for a first-round pick and 2 second-rounders. At this point, the Thunder had amassed 17 first-round picks. While the team made numerous trades to acquire all those picks, the ones I just mentioned were the most significant. The following season, though, was a wash. The Thunder were one of the worst teams in the West, intentionally tanking to utilize their 3 picks in the 2021 draft. Unfortunately, luck was not on their side, as those picks ended up being the 6th, 16th, and 18th overall selections. Instead of having the chance to draft Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, or Jalen Green, they had to settle for players who weren't as highly regarded. They used the 6th pick on Josh Giddey, selected Alperen Sengun at 16th, and took Trey Mann at 18th as well. They later traded Sengun for 2 first-round picks as they played the long game. In the second round, they picked Miles McBride at 36, who averaged 16 points and 5 assists at West Virginia, but they traded him for Jeremiah Robinson Earl in a pick swap on draft night. They also selected Aaron Wiggins with the 55th pick. Despite all the picks, the 2022 season didn't have much to discuss, besides SGA taking an offensive leap, averaging 24.5 points per game, and becoming the focal point of the team. The big focus for the season was how high a draft pick they could secure for the upcoming 2022 NBA draft. Luckily for them, it finally seemed that things started to go their way as they landed the 2nd and 12th picks. After the Magic selected Paolo Banchero first overall, the Thunder had to choose between Jabari Smith Jr. and a talented 7-footer with guard skills from Gonzaga named Chet Holmgren. The last time the Thunder had to pick this high was in 2007 when they drafted Kevin Durant. Ironically, they opted for Holmgren, who showed shades of KD. With the 12th pick, they drafted Jalen Williams, who had an interesting backstory. He began as a 6'1" guard for Santa Clara off the NBA scouts' radar, but then he hit a growth spurt in college and grew to 6'6", making him a top recruit. Intrigued by his unique story, the Thunder selected him. They also drafted Peyton Watson at 30, but traded him to the Nuggets for a 2027 first-round pick and drafted another guy named Jalen Williams from Arkansas. While it's unusual to have 2 players with the same name, he has provided solid depth as a big man for the team. Everything seemed to be looking up, especially with Chet Holmgren on board, but then disaster struck. Yep, it's exactly what it looked like. That was Chet getting injured in a Drew League game against LeBron. Personally, I appreciate players participating in these events because they offer fans a closer look at the action in a more close setting, often at more affordable prices. However, teams don't like the risks involved, like injuries. Unfortunately, Holmgren was a casualty of this situation, suffering a foot injury that caused him to miss the entire season, and that was going to be his rookie year, but of course he missed it. Fast forward to the next season of 2023, where he was back healthy. The Thunder starting lineup featured Shea, Giddey, Lu Dort, J-Dub, and Chet Holmgren. While the fit was a bit unusual, they had a roster full of switchable defenders and players capable of handling the ball. During the season, Shea entered MVP conversations, J-Dub proved to be the perfect backcourt partner, and Chet Holmgren played like a seasoned veteran. Lu Dort's offensive contributions were minimal, primarily limited to occasional catch-and-shoot threes, but his defense remained top-notch. Meanwhile, Josh Giddey became the odd man out as the playoffs approached. In the first round, the Thunder swept the Pelicans and then faced the Mavericks in the second round. This matchup highlighted a thrilling back-and-forth between two of the league's rising stars, Luka and Shea. However, Josh Giddey struggled to produce and was benched in favor of Isaiah Joe. The series was competitive, but Luka and Kyrie proved to be a formidable duo, and the Thunder exited in the second round, led by PJ Washington's unexpected peak performance. Despite the loss, Thunder fans remained optimistic about the future. This season, they traded Giddey for Alex Caruso and have since emerged as the best team in the West, tied for the best record in the league. Shea is still in MVP discussions, and the entire Thunder core looks championship ready. In contrast, the Clippers, who originally acquired Paul George, find themselves in a bad position. They never advanced past the Western Conference during the George and Kawhi era, including a disastrous 3-1 playoff collapse against the Denver Nuggets in the bubble. Injuries have plagued their championship hopes, and with George now with the 76ers, the Clippers have lost significant traction. Looking back, the trade appears incredibly lopsided. The Thunder have effectively secured the Clippers' future while positioning themselves as a championship contender for years to come, even retaining 4 first-round picks in the 2025 NBA Draft. This is a perfect example of playing the long game and executing a trade that sets up a potential dynasty. But what do you think? Will the Thunder win a championship soon as a result of the Paul George trade? Tell me in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.